my name is Maddie. I'm an Arizona girl who's been living and traveling through Mexico for the past 6-ish years now, and during the past 2 of those years, I have been dating in Mexico. So it is finally time for me to spill the tea on what it's like dating in Mexico. Alright, so let's set the scene. I have been dating in Mexico for about 2 years now. During that time, I have gone on a date with 17 different guys. Of those, 9 of them were only first dates. Basically, I knew right off the bat that it wasn't going to be a good fit. For instance, the guy tells me the reason his last relationship ended was because his girlfriend thought he was flirting all the time. Definitely saw that on the date. Another guy spent the entire date talking just about himself, literally the entire time. Barely asked a single question about me, and was also super condescending and wanting me to prove myself, prove my Spanish, didn't believe things that I was saying for no apparent reason, just all bad news. So basically, thank you, next. And then 5 of those got to a second date. Only 3 guys made it to 3 dates or more, and usually that turned into more of a long-term dating situation. So the age range of those guys is 26 to 39, and I have been 29 to 31 during these 2 years. And I gotta only guess about the guy that I say is 39 because he was using old pictures and definitely lying about his age. Where were these guys from? First, I'll start off by breaking it down by specific location. So we have 3 guys in Mexico City, 1 from Guadalajara, 5 that were from Queretaro, 1 from Veracruz, 1 from Durango, 2 guys that are Mexican American, so born in Mexico, but raised or spent a significant amount of time in Mexico. 1 person was from the US, 1 guy, these are all guys. 1 guy was from Argentina, 1 from Colombia, and 1 from Venezuela. So while all these dates happened in Mexico, some of this was a little bit more international, and I wasn't really closing myself off to only dating Mexicans. And I actually was specifically trying to avoid, well, not avoid, but I was more so looking to not date men from the US, because if I was gonna do that, I would just go back to the US. And if we break this down by country, 11 of those from Mexico, 3 from the US, and then 1 from Argentina, Colombia, and Venezuela. Now, just for fun, I wanted to throw in what the guys' Zodiac signs were. There were a couple that I didn't know, but I had no dates with Geminis, Libras, or Cancer. A little surprising about that, especially on the Libra front, because I have so many Libra friends and I get along with Libras really well. But 1 Pisces, 1 Taurus, 1 Sagittarius, 1 Capricorn, 1 Virgo, 2 Aquarius, 2 Aries, 3 Scorpios, and 4 Leos. So apparently I really like or vibe with Leos. And I wasn't going after anyone specifically because of their zodiac sign. This just happened to be how it shook out. And how we met. The majority of these guys I met on Tinder, Tinder being the most popular dating app in Mexico, with Bumble being the 2nd most popular. I just have never used Bumble. 2 reached out to me on Instagram and I decided to go out with them. And 3 were unicorns, if you will, that I met in the wild, which is kind of rare these days. Before I move on, if you're enjoying this video, be sure to hit that subscribe button. I will be posting a new video every week. Number of times I was catfished. Thankfully, only 1 time, and it was that guy I say is maybe 39 / I have no idea how old he was. He used all old pictures of himself / in some he looked more ethnic and others he looked European. I feel like most of them were not pictures of him, so when I got there, I was like, oh, are you such and such a person? Okay, so who paid for the first date? For the sake of argument, I'm just looking at the first date, but the majority did pay, 11, and I do believe that's because the culture in Mexico, where it's customary in Mexico that if a man asks you out on a date, he is the one that will pay. Of course, I do always offer to be polite, and most of them decline. There were 4 dates where we split the check, and 2 where I ended up having to pay because they came up with some excuse like they forgot to bring cash, or they would get the next date if I just get this one. The type of dates that I went on, as you can see, the majority of the dates were dinner dates, but I also had quite a few activity dates. So for instance, one of these, we drove out to Amayalco here in Queretaro and went for a nice hike and had a picnic. It was super lovely. I do like activity dates, although a lot of times I am wary of them because if you don't like the person, then you could be kind of trapped in a situation with them for a lot longer than you would at, say, a brunch date. that I went on 3 of those, a coffee date or a drink date. And just a note on the drinks, those happened before I started my 2023 booze free, which I'm continuing. And on the topic of not drinking, I had some people on Facebook ask if that's impacted my dating life at all. And honestly, I kind of thought it would, because drinking is a pretty prevalent part of Mexican culture, but it really hasn't been. I think I only had one guy press me on it a little bit and like really trying to encourage me, just, oh, you could just have drinks today. Oh, one cheat day is fine. It's like, nah, this is like a New Year's resolution kind of thing. But beyond that, it really hasn't been a thing. How I got to these dates, surprisingly, and this is a huge difference I think between the US and Mexico, 11 guys picked me up for the first date. And of course I have here a safety notice. They never actually come to my house, because I don't want some random person from usually the internet knowing exactly where I live. So I go to a safe location that's close by and they pick me up from there until I find out that they're not psycho, which sometimes has not been the case. So yeah, safety first. 6 of the first dates I took an Uber or some other form of transportation, and 1 I actually traveled out of state for. This actually happened to be a situation where I was traveling from somewhere else and routed through Mexico City, so I decided to stay the night in Mexico City and have the date there with somebody that I'd been talking to for quite a while. Before I dive into the rest of this video talking about cultural differences, machismo, and other things, especially that you guys requested of me prior to making this video, I want to give a little disclaimer. This video is based on my real life experiences while dating in Mexico. Keep in mind that everyone has different experiences, so I am not implying that my dating life represents what everyone will experience while dating in Mexico. Additionally, while all the experiences I will describe happened in Mexico, I'm not necessarily implying that these experiences are unique to Mexico. Finally, I have not included commentary on anyone else's dating experiences in an effort to avoid perpetuating possibly biased points of view or certain stereotypes. So first I want to dive into observations and differences that I've noticed between dating in the US and Mexico. And this is in no particular order. Perhaps one of the biggest observations, cultural shocks, or whatever you might want to call it, is just dating here in general. I had no idea what to expect at first, except for those stereotypes and the things that you see on movies and stuff, which I knew wasn't really what I could go off of. So a lot of it at first was just kind of sussing out the situation and seeing what are the customs here. Is it customary for the guy to pick you up or to pay for the date? What types of dates do guys usually try or usually want to take you on? Basically everything in between. And so there's the whole element of like, you're always trying to see, is this a good person, or are they really toxic? Are they actually single when they say they're single? Like in general, you're trying to figure out those things usually in dating, but then add the culture shock of it all. And it's like, does this feel weird because this guy is being weird, or because he's being cagey or secretive or something, or does it feel weird because I'm just not familiar with it? So there was a whole process, especially in the beginning, of dating guys and just trying to understand how do these things normally go, and kind of getting tricked a whole lot at first. A lot of the guys making me pay for things happened at first, like, oh, we can't split the check, can't both pay on cards here, was one that happened early on, or forgetting a wallet happened numerous times, or the, hey, if you buy this, I'll send you a transfer later, knowing full well that I don't have a Mexican bank account, and that would be the only way for them to transfer me money besides giving me cash, which conveniently they didn't have. So lots of learning lessons in all of this, and now I'm gonna break down a little bit more of what that looks like. So one of the first things that I noticed is that I'm kind of exotic here in Mexico. I've had so many comments throughout dating and chatting on the apps and stuff where men make comments specifically about my eye color, my hair color, even some hinting at skin color as well. And I've never really been in this position in the US. I think I'm pretty average looking compared to other women there. So this was definitely something that I kind of had to watch out for in a way, that I wasn't getting fetishized or that men weren't going after me specifically for that. And I think it's absolutely okay to have preferences and a type. I think we all do. I definitely do. But if I got the impression that they were going after me for specifically that, I always kind of felt like there was a little bit more behind it and in somewhat of an unsavory way. Additionally, on the topic of being a foreigner, there were definitely guys that I realized were pursuing me because of my perceived wealth. And I say perceived wealth because I'm not a billionaire and I'm not rich, although some people think that because I'm a YouTuber, and definitely because of the disparity in wages between the US and Mexico. I could tell that some men looked at me as their golden goose kind of thing, that like I would pay for dates and I would buy a whole lot of things, and that's a really uncomfortable and super unfair position to be in. I don't expect that of a man in a relationship, and I certainly don't want them to expect that of me. Another observation is that while I can have relationships entirely in Spanish now, there's still and has always been this feeling that I can't completely be myself, or major cultural differences that like the things that they're gonna quote, like movie quotes or memes or things like that, a lot of times I don't get, and vice versa. I'll say references to things from the US or from cultural things that I know, and it just kind of falls flat, which has been kind of disheartening in a way, because I always feel like there's this gap between me and the person that I'm dating by no fault of their own, but just because there are those cultural differences. And on the topic of communication, I think everyone can agree that in any type of relationship, you're going to have communication issues, but it is especially the case when you're talking in your second language, because sometimes I'll be having a conversation or thinking that I'm having a certain type of conversation, and we're talking about two completely different things, or the gravity of that conversation is more serious from my end or more serious from their end, and I don't realize. I will say that Spanish speakers, in particular Mexicans, especially since that's who I've dated the most of, are so patient and so kind and willing to work with me through all the mistakes and me fumbling over my words or not being able to say certain things, which I really appreciate, and that's given me the confidence and the willingness to keep going and dating despite those difficulties. Next thing is, I have found that there is a huge range, the full spectrum of the effort that guys will put in to dating and to a relationship. On the one hand, there's boys, children who expect me to cook and clean and do wifely duties and basically be their mommy, even when we're not in a relationship. And I've had numerous examples of this where the way that they behave, either in public or especially in private, like coming over to my house, is making a huge mess everywhere and just expecting that I'll clean it up. They're expecting that I do the dishes and that I clean up. I mean, recently I had a guy come in and put his shoes up on the couch, and then at some point he's like, oh, there's rocks and stuff in my shoes, and he just empties it out all over the living room, not outside. And I was stunned because I wasn't raised like that, and I didn't know. It seems like a common sense thing, but that's one of many examples of this happening. I have gone out on dates with numerous guys who I'm very sure don't even know how to do laundry. I meant to mention here that I've noticed that almost 100% of the time, if the guy still lives at home with his parents, he expected me to take the role of his mother. It is very common for young adults in Mexico to still live with their family into adulthood, and sometimes until they get married, but I would say more than half the guys I dated did live on their own. So there's that. There's men who expect a mom replacement, essentially. And then there's actual men who will go out of their way to show me respect, take me on nice dates. And I don't even mean expensive, but I mean just putting in effort to plan the date, take me somewhere nice or new, or just coordinate things, or collaborate on the date as well, and not just expect that I'm gonna do all of it. So there has been a full range. And again, I can't say that this is just specific to Mexico, but this has been my experience. So the next observation I have, if you remember back at the beginning of this video, I mentioned 9 guys only got a first date. And one big reason for that is because I could tell right away that they only wanted that one thing. Super easy to pick up on that, and that's not the type of girl that I am. And I'm very direct, very honest, and very clear about what I'm looking for in a relationship and what I will and will not do. And so those guys also could be weeded out really quickly. Sometimes they got to the second date before I realized they're just gonna do the bare minimum in order to get what they wanted, so to speak. And in that case, again, I could just move on. And I know what you might be thinking, because I met a lot of these guys on Tinder, but Tinder, the dynamic here is so much different in Mexico than it is in the US. I'll get to that a little bit later. Another big thing I noticed is that so many of the guys that I went out with were still hung up on an ex or multiple exes, and this ended up being one of the big things that sabotaged relationships that otherwise seemed to have a lot of potential. There was even one situation where I was very much under the impression that I was dating this guy. We had gone out a number of times, and then all of a sudden there was an event where his ex was there. He seemingly got back together with said ex right in front of me. That was pretty shocking to see. That has honestly never happened to me before. And I didn't bring it up there because it didn't seem like the right time, but later on I did. And the guy gaslit me in saying basically along the lines of, "What? No, we're just friends. We've just been friends this entire time." What? No. That has been very tricky and something that I've had to keep a keen eye out for in dating. If there are any signs that there's something going on with an ex, I'm out of there. Next thing is, a lot of people have commented that it's probably going to be harder for me, or it probably has been harder for me to date in Mexico as a Western woman, because Western women, as in those from the United States, are much more independent or perhaps feminist. And in my experience, I have not had that problem at all. I haven't noticed that any guys are put off by my level of independence. I don't know if that's because I'm not super hyper ultra independent to where that would be a turnoff, or because I pick the type of guys that don't mind that and that respect a woman's independence. I know this is a question because that is a thing, that is a stereotype in Mexico. However, that has not been my experience. Not to say that it's not, but it just hasn't been mine. Along these same lines, another topic that's been brought up is the fact that I don't want children. And many people have asked, has it been difficult for me to find a relationship or find a guy who's okay with that? And the answer is no. Again, I'm very upfront about that. And even in Tinder now, there's so many options that you can check off. So I specifically look for guys that say, I don't want any kids in their profile. If it's not in there, that's a conversation that we have very early on. And I really haven't had an issue with that. While this probably does reduce the dating pool a little bit for me, I haven't found it to be a major issue or a major struggle that's caused me any problems finding guys to date. Next observation I have from my experiences dating in Mexico is that unfortunately there are some incredibly toxic, manipulative guys out there. And of course this is the case anywhere in the world, not just Mexico, but unfortunately there are those toxicos here as well. So these are the type of guys that try to do the whole love bombing thing with like plentiful compliments, trying to buy gifts, promising great things in the future, and that is an absolute hard no for me. I can spot it from 100 miles away and I go running for the hills, farther than the 100 miles away that I've already spotted it. And unfortunately, one of the guys that I dated longer term, I think he was some version of a pathological liar, because it was like almost everything that the relationship was built around were lies. This has been one of the most frustrating parts of dating in Mexico. And just dating in general, right? Because again, this is not just specific to Mexico, but being lied to, especially I feel like for me, as an incredibly honest person, I absolutely hate being lied to. And that is like a first strike, you're out kind of thing for me, especially after the experiences that I've had. Along these same lines, it has been my personal experience that many men in Mexico live up to the reputation of being unfaithful and cheating. Of the guys that I have been in a long-term relationship with, all of them have cheated. All of them have also been from Mexico City. I don't know if there's a correlation there, but those are the facts. Another thing that really surprised me about dating in Mexico was that many guys will want to have the exclusivity talk on the first or second date. Basically, if they're interested in you, they kind of want to lock it down right away. And that is in stark contrast to the other side of the spectrum, where there are guys who are complete commitment phobes and want nothing to do with a relationship. So it's very, very interesting to me because I personally, after a first, maybe even a second date, I don't know the person well enough to feel comfortable saying that we're going to be exclusive or saying that we're going to be in a relationship, and that's nothing that's ever happened to me in the US. So that's been a huge culture shock in the world of dating, and one where I am generally left speechless because I don't know how to talk about exclusivity when I don't even know the person's favorite color or their middle name. But it's been equally as tough for me to be so interested in a guy and have him just want to do the whole situationship thing. If you're not sure what that is, it's where it's kind of a relationship, but kind of not, because you're basically boyfriend and girlfriend without the labels. And it's this whole ring around the rosy of not having any idea what you are or where you're going or what you're doing. But it is very easy to slip into because it kind of feels like you're headed in that direction, but ultimately never goes there. Now I want to talk about the topic of money. I've always felt this tension around money in dating. I understand that that's because the wages here are so much lower. People in general just don't make as much. But it's always felt like kind of a thing in dating. And again, I'm not the type of person that needs to go out to 5-star restaurants or to be wined and dined and do all the fancy thing, but it has very much felt like when we're splitting things, it's down to the last peso, and if they can ever get away with not paying for something where instead I pay for it, that has generally been the case. Not always. There have been men that definitely take responsibility for their part of the finances in the relationship, but it has always been a point of stress, I'll say, where it's sort of just this elephant in the room that you don't really talk about, but it's always there, which makes a very comfortable dynamic surrounding money. So I said earlier that I was going to talk about Tinder. There's been a drastic difference between how guys are like in the US on Tinder and how they're like in Mexico. In the US, Tinder does have that reputation for being like a hookup app. Here in Mexico, not so much. In fact, in the US, it's very common, I would say like 50-50, that you're gonna receive like an explicit, unwelcomed message within the first, couple exchanges. Here in Mexico, I was gonna say never, all but like 1 or maybe 2 times had that be the case. Like sometimes it's very clear that they're only looking for that one thing and it's easy to just unmatch and move on. But the majority of the time, very respectful, super want to get to know you and treat it more respectfully, just in general. So it's not so much of that, like you don't know what you're gonna get. What I have had be the case are so many dudes that all they want to do is have a pen pal. They just want to message back and forth and back and forth and back and forth for all of eternity, which grinds my gears because I spend enough time online. I don't need to have a pen pal relationship with somebody that I've never even met before. Now, something I really enjoyed about dating in Mexico is that so many men offer to pick me up. So I haven't had a car for the past 2-ish years or so, and when I mention that, a lot of times they'll offer to come pick me up. That has been really nice, and I feel like kind of addressing the topic of how gentlemanly are men in Mexico in dating. Some of them super are very like opening the car door, opening restaurant doors, some that will even pull the chair out for me and like push it in for me to sit down and things like that. I really enjoy that. I don't need to be the independent, I don't need no man, I can do it all myself. Yes, I can, but in the dynamic, when I have a man who would like to do that for me, I will happily and graciously accept that type of behavior. But there is a spectrum. So you do have the very gentlemanly type, and then those who I really think it's the same guys that are just looking for a mommy replacement, that they are not going to make any special effort to open doors for you or do anything like taking charge of the situation. Even some guys make no effort to walk on the traffic side of the sidewalk. Maybe it's kind of old-fashioned, but I like when a man wants to stand on the traffic side of the road or do these little gestures to show that he cares and that he wants to be protective in a healthy way, like operating in his healthy masculine. And that makes me feel a lot safer and more comfortable in the dynamic with him. So now I want to address the major elephant in the room. And this is a comment/question that I got so much on YouTube and Facebook and basically everywhere else. everyone wanted me to address the topic of machismo. I'm going to do this in the best way, the most respectful, non-stereotyping way possible, because this has been a journey for me to discover what exactly the machismo culture in Mexico is. So first I want to start out with the definition. Machismo is a social behavior pattern in which the Latino male exhibits possessive, aggressive, demeaning, and or controlling behavior to anyone in a position he perceives as inferior to his, demanding subservience. To me, this also includes implications of toxic masculinity, patriarchy, sexism, infidelity, jealousy, and various forms of control and abuse. So one of the biggest examples of machismo culture that I've experienced in my dating life is infidelity, where we are in an exclusive dynamic and yet that person still goes out and cheats anyway. Another example is that mommy replacement thing where I've had multiple guys that expect, even when we're not in an official relationship, they expect me to wait on their hand and foot. Wait on them hand and foot? I always get that phrase wrong. While I'm absolutely fine contributing my part in a relationship dynamic, I'm out there making my own money. I don't need somebody to cover my rent. I don't need somebody to really do anything for me. To be in a relationship, or for me to want to be in a relationship, the man would need to add something to my life just like I would add something to his life. What it is not, to me, is me being that mommy figure where I'm doing everything else in my own life plus taking care of a little man-child. Yet that is the expectation and they feel no shame for acting the way that they do. Thankfully though, I have not experienced some of the more extreme, you might say, versions of machismo culture where the guy that I'm with is super possessive or violent, extreme emotional abuse, or major control issues. Perhaps that's because I just would not allow that to happen. I've seen hints of that with guys. At the very first sign of that type of toxicity, I'm just out. Because I'm not gonna sit around and find out if it was a one-off thing or if I end up in some abusive situation. Not again. Unfortunately, it was also through dating that I realized sexism and the patriarchy are alive and well in Mexico in many aspects of daily life and culture. A very basic example of this would be going to a restaurant. The waiter will almost always address the male first, and if there are any questions to the table, it's always directed at the male, even if it has something to do with me or my order. But there were many instances where I noticed that the man in the situation was much more respected or listened to than I was, just because that's the dynamic of the culture. And it's been very frustrating for me in the times that I've been single and not dating somebody or not having a guy around me, because I even get the questions like, well, where's your husband? As if I can't do certain things unless a man is there, or why am I doing those certain things and my husband or whoever is not? So what are my conclusions about dating in Mexico? Well, I can't confidently say that I think it's better or worse than the US. One, because it's been a hot second since I've dated anybody from the US and a lot can change in 6 years. But two, because I think each culture comes with its challenges and its pros and cons. That said, I'm not necessarily going to miss dating in Mexico because it has come with its challenges and I'm kind of just burnt out on the whole thing. So some people have asked me, when I go back to the US, will I be dating there? No tengo ganas de estar en las aplicaciones. I don't know why I said that in Spanish. I don't really want to get on the apps. I will not be getting on Tinder or Bumble or Hinge or any of the other freaking apps. So I'm just gonna have to hope that my media naranja is gonna walk by me in Sprouts, or when I go on a hike, or when I'm running errands, or something. Before you go, I wanna mention that I will have a live stream coming up where I answer more questions, so feel free to drop a comment right now and I will address it in the stream and basically get into some more specific stories that I've had while dating. Be sure to subscribe to my channel. On the screen here is a video of a day in my life in Mexico, so you can continue watching until I release a new video. And one more thing before you go. And gong that bell so you get notified the next time I release a new video, and I hope to see you there.